Welcome to episode 127, and today I'm joined by Julian Fenwick, who's the CEO of GRC Solutions, and they're a compliance training company. So we're going to talk about how to scale internationally while investing in people and innovation. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks, Karen. Great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. And even though we're going to talk about people and innovation and your business journey, I was at a session this morning with some business owners, and we got talking about compliance and just the amount of compliance and what feels like red tape that is around for business owners. So I'm sure we'll talk about that as well, and how your business can help us out there. But I guess to start off, you've grown the business across multiple cities in Australia and into Asia. So what's your biggest learning managing people, managing cultures across regions?
Yeah, look, for us, we work in specific sectors. So, as you say, everyone's regulated these days. Everyone needs to share with their staff what the guardrails are for business, and we need to empower people with the knowledge and skills that they need to look after that business and grow the business and look after each other and look after their clients. And in some industries, it's a ticket to play. In others, it's just really good corporate governance. For us, we've always aspired to be at the premium end of our market. What we want to produce is really good quality training that takes the pain out of it for our clients. We know that it's not necessarily something everyone wants to do, so we want to make sure it's effective compliance training, and that's not only making it effective for the end user who needs to learn these things and understand what they need to understand in their business, but also for minimizing the amount of employee time that's spent on these things. And that takes a lot of discussion and working with our clients and building up trust and building up relationships. And so the philosophy that we've always started with is that the culture that we build internally is one that gets reflected externally. And by that, I mean that we have to have a collaborative culture amongst ourselves. We are all from different backgrounds, professionally, age-wise, gender, the whole gamut. We are the real mixed bag of an organization. We have lawyers, we have graphic designers, we have salespeople, we have tech people, and we all come from all different parts of the world. And so it's really important for us to have those clear lines of communication and clear values and beliefs and behaviors that enable us to work very quickly and closely with each other, and to understand that if we have to say something that's a bit abrupt to someone, that they'll get why. It's not necessarily personal. It is about doing the right thing for the client in the long run. And so that has sort of stood us in really good stead as we grow the business. We started as a very, very small team and have grown organically. It's not a high growth, VC funded, we're going to go from 5 people to 5,000 in, 2 weeks. It is about building out a very slow, but I suppose solid base for the business that then we can add people to as we grow.
Yeah. And how many people do you have at the moment?
We're now at 45.
Okay, so it's a pretty good sized business.
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. Yeah.
And I know, prior to this episode, when I was looking at your business and we were discussing, what we might talk about today, there was a mention of AI increasing your productivity and job satisfaction in your team. So I wonder if you could give us an example of how you've implemented AI in the business, and how do you not lose that human element when you do that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the job satisfaction piece is something that probably got me over the line with AI a lot faster than perhaps others. I was talking to some colleagues who also have a small business in the regulatory compliance area, and they said that their software engineers were using AI for coding, and what it meant was that they could do trial and error a lot faster. So instead of something taking 3 weeks, it would take 3 hours. And so by the end of the day, your feeling of achievement is a lot higher because you're able to get through the workload a lot faster, but also test it and come back to it and then build on it. And so what they were telling me was around the job satisfaction piece. And then, I spoke to our tech development team and said, this is what we're hearing. Let's go and have a talk to them. And we heard from their team. And we've had the same response. So where we actually get higher levels of productivity and people working on the things that actually challenge them. So they're not doing the grunt work. They're not necessarily, going over the same task day after day. They're able to build on that. And then that human element is actually the checking to see everything's right. For us, it is that piece of, you've got to be the one who is verifying all of this.
Yes.
Because otherwise there could be mistakes. Now, all of us have seen, very poor marketing copy that is, straight out of ChatGPT. And in our industry, that just doesn't pass.
Yeah.
We're dealing with legal and regulatory compliance. If we don't get it right, then there could be huge risks for our clients. And so from a content development point of view, I think it's a great starting point, but it's not necessarily, going to get rid of the human being in the place, because otherwise, who's going to make sure it's correct? And you hear the horror stories, right? Yeah.
Yes, we can live them ourselves if we want to play with ChatGPT all day.
Exactly. So for us, it's about enhancing the ability of the team to do their job, but still respecting that they have that subject matter expertise. It could enhance the way we design content. So training content these days, there's an expectation of being video based. And so using AI to generate videos is fantastic. Using AI when we need to redo a script for a video, it's so quick. We're not actually having to go and shoot the video, put the sound, do the editing. It can all be done in a matter of hours. And then, you're deploying these days onto mobile phones. If we think about, what's now called the deskless worker, which is a new one for me, but I think it's really interesting because it actually does describe the people working in pubs and clubs, the people who are working, for outdoor workers in local government. We do a lot in the education sector. So we've got, teachers, staff, volunteers. How are they absorbing information? And, can we make that a better experience for them? And so the AI really does help us with that. And then the data analytics up the back gives us the verification to say, yes, this has been absorbed properly and that these people do understand it. And we've reduced the amount of hours of mandatory training that they need to do. So, using clever tech is not only good for us internally, but it's also really good externally.
Yeah. And what are the challenges that you found? Because I know talking to some businesses, not everyone in their team is that excited about AI, or there's just this feeling of overwhelm, like where do we even start from? So did you experience any of those sorts of challenges, or people
Yeah,
generally?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You get different champions.
Mm,
And it's always surprising who it comes from. That's
yeah.
what I found is that, I thought our legal team would be the most resistant. In actual fact, some of them are the most, forward thinking about it.
Mm,
From the tech side, there's obviously that's a concern around, well, how do we protect this? How do
yeah.
we put those guardrails in place? Where is our IP? Is that being protected? We don't want people using public facing ChatGPT with corporate information.
Yeah.
So, we've got to be very cautious about that. But I also think if you don't provide that space for people to use the tools, they will be using other tools.
Yeah.
And we've just got to accept that that's the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to someone about this because when I entered the workforce was before the internet, which I know for some people listening might just blow your mind.
Mm,
But there was a time, and I remember when we were first given access to the internet at work, and it was really locked down. Only certain people were allowed it, and only on
yeah.
certain websites. And you're nodding, so you probably had the same experience. And some people get email, and some people weren't allowed to get it. And there was just this
Yeah.
whole, and it feels very much like that to me, which is really a bit silly because you're right, everyone's using it
Yep.
anyway. So it's just, how do we actually use it in a way that works for the business, and we have those appropriate guardrails and training in
Yeah,
place and
exactly.
really make the
Yeah.
most of this tool. Yeah.
And thinking about it from, an ethical point of view as well, and understanding that people within the business will be in a different part of their journey with it. What are they going to use it for? How is it going to enhance them? Are they apprehensive about it, or are they really keen on it? I think we've got to understand that people will need some training.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just want to sit and chat. It's not necessarily training. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like an idiot in front of everyone else. So can I
Yes.
just get some one-on-one? And
Yeah.
that's really important as well.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes
there
even just
are,
chatting with the AI, you can learn, right? Yeah.
you can
It'll
talk to your
train you.
bot. Yeah,
Very
I think
good.
that's
And I
very
know that
true.
you have a strong graduate program in legal and research. So, what have you learned about developing early career talent? Because this is something that can come up a lot with business owners as well. Is graduates, and how do we do this properly?
Yeah, so we've been really lucky. To call it a graduate program is probably over-egging it a little bit. In that, we've always taken in uni students who are studying law journalism, law commerce, those sort of areas, and given them work as they progress through their degree, and they scale up in the quiet times and scale down when there's exams on and all of that. And it's been fabulous. It's just been the best experience for all of us. We really love having. I think we have three at the moment, and they work so well together. And I think it is partially that we're giving them an experience of corporate that isn't overly threatening. It is manageable. It's able to be done, but it's also within their sphere of interest. And there's senior people that they can learn from.
Mm.
Um, but they're not necessarily looking to us to give them the whole of corporate experience and every bit of job satisfaction, because in the back of their minds they're going to go on and be a lawyer someday or something like that. Now some have stayed for years and years and years, and that's been
Mm.
wonderful. Others come through and transition and go to work for one of the major law firms or something like that, and we love that too. They also self-replace. So from a
Mm.
recruitment point of view, the first question we ask when someone's moving on is, do you know anyone else who
Yeah.
might like to do this job? And
Yeah.
that's fantastic,
Mm.
because they bring people in who will be informed by their friends as to what the
Yes.
work life is like, what's expected of you. And we've
Mm.
just really enjoyed that process. And now that we're getting more scale, we want to bring that into other areas of the business. Can we do that in our graphic design team? Can we do it in our software development team? How do you do it in a sales and marketing way? Because every small business will tell you how hard it is to find good salespeople.
Yes.
And it's always a question of, like, do you get someone really experienced who doesn't know your industry, or do you get someone really young who needs to be taught? And what are the personality traits? And, there's all sorts of questions
Mm.
around that. But I think that it's part of our obligation as business owners who've had good careers to make opportunities for the next generation coming through. We need taxpayers to pay for our retirement, right? So,
Mm.
and some of us are getting closer. So we hope, one day. But you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
how do we give them those corporate opportunities
Mm.
if there isn't some sort of program to bring grads in?
Yeah, it's always that chicken and egg, isn't it? Like when you're a graduate, because people want experience, but you can't get the
Yeah,
experience. So yeah, it's a great way for you to actually trial people as well,
yeah.
and to say, okay, are they going to work well in the business? And I love that then they can be advocates for you and sell you through to other people as well. So save you on some
We
recruitment
have a
fees.
network of people who've come through, and it
Yeah.
sits on their LinkedIn profile, and they're out there working in other jobs and things like that. And it's really wonderful. And they all
Yeah.
sort of remain friendly with the business. It's really, they're part of that family.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And part of that is mentorship, really. You talked about how they'd be paired up essentially with some other members of staff. But
Mm.
what about when you're working hybrid or remote? Like, what's working for you at the moment? How do you generally work as a team?
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges of business today, right? Because if everyone's working from home, there are more linear relationships when it's coming to mentoring that
Yeah.
individual will be talking to their boss all day, but isn't talking to the person who would have been sitting next to them in the office. And it's that out of sight, out of mind thing. And if that sort of, you know, chatting to each other over a coffee in the kitchen, asking someone a dumb question that you would never ask your boss, if that sort of thing isn't available because people are isolated, then we've got a real challenge. So we're conscious of it, and we've all through COVID, we had huge programs to reach out to people, even to our clients. We built a whole lot of training around working from home, and gave that away for free, and had I think 30,000 people
Yeah.
go
Wow.
through 15-minute modules on
Yep.
mental health while working from home, ergonomics while
Mm.
working from home, and it's just a great way to keep in contact.
Mm.
And I think we learned some lessons there too around you can't just have that one-on-one relationship, and it can't always be about the tasks that we're dealing with today. Sometimes you just need to have a nothing conversation, and
Yep.
you may as well have everyone in the room. And
Mm.
that whole idea that we're going to cut out as many irrelevant meetings as possible. Sometimes you don't know whether they're going to be relevant or
Yeah.
irrelevant until they're done. And sometimes they are just checking in on people, saying hello to people, thinking about, well, that person is in the Perth office by themselves. Has anyone reached out to that person in the last 2 days?
Mm.
Um, and I don't think that's any different to working at head office.
Yep.
Is, we now have contact days in the office. I think it's Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm always here when I'm not traveling for work. Other people are more likely to be in on a Friday and so on.
Mm.
But there is that trying to get that collegiality back, where that whole sort of idea that, I might not be your boss, or I might, just have a different opinion on something, or can I call you in because I want your advice on this? And it's
Mm.
just really quick and really easy. But you do need to make a concerted effort, right? And you need to trust that the individuals who aren't present are doing their job, and they're participating as best they can.
Yeah, and I think your point about the meetings that are wasted is a good one, because I remember talking to Maya Paleka, who does a lot of work in this space around how to best work in hybrid ways. And she said we need to see coffee meetings as work meetings.
Mm,
And I agree, because it is those just, having a casual chat that often brings up things that you would never get otherwise. And as much as tech is awesome, and you get all those little apps that can have random
mm.
coffees through Teams and whatever, it's not the same.
No, no, it's too rigid, isn't it? And
Yeah. Yeah.
the stand-up 15-minute meeting with the really strict agenda,
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah.
From a software development point of view, that's really great, and that's how we need to work. But
Mm.
equally, we need to have that sort of human interaction, checking in with people. Are they okay? I always think that if you're communicating electronically and you get a snarky email from somebody, there's a chance that that'll escalate.
Yeah.
You get offended, you respond in kind, and it just escalates, right?
Mm.
Because you've got no context. You didn't
Yeah.
walk into the office and see that person, was looking a bit down, or you didn't hear from another colleague that individual was having a bad day, something went wrong at home. It's just very transactional.
Mm.
And I think once we actually have that context, then we're all a bit more forgiving, and we can say, okay, well, that's inappropriate to send me that email. I'll drop in on their office and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've got to work out how to do that. And it's an evolution. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone's got the answer. Small business,
Mm.
big business, no one seems to have the answer.
Mm.
Even the governments are still debating this. And
Yes.
yeah,
Makes good headlines, doesn't it? Um,
yeah, clickbait. Yeah.
And I know for your business you've expanded into Asia. So how does that add into complexity, cultural challenges, communication? What have been
Yeah.
the pros and cons of doing that?
Yeah. So our philosophy was to sort of follow our clients into Asia.
Hmm.
So a lot of Australian businesses are doing work up in Singapore and Hong Kong, and we really like that market. But I think there's always lessons to be learned. Um, I think Australia is really, really well placed. I'd say that Australians are experienced in a multicultural environment. We work in a
Mm.
multicultural environment. We know how to behave ourselves in foreign cultures. And I think we also know what we don't know, if that makes sense. You know that, oh, I'm a bit out of my depth here.
Mm.
Um, what I think Australians probably need to remember is that international expansion takes time.
Yeah.
Asia takes time. I know Telstra and ANZ, if you look at their case studies, they would say exactly the same thing. But small business often looks at that and says, oh, they're big business. Of course, that would take time. But it's the same for small business. You need to be thinking about how to build the relationships, how to build trust, how to understand those particular markets, and where do you have a competitive advantage and where do you perhaps misunderstand things.
Mm.
Um, I know for us in Singapore, we've been there 8 years, I think now, and that was a real learning curve. But it's great fun. That's the other side of it. We're not in business just to slave ourselves every day. Going
Mm.
up to Singapore and being exposed to different businesses, different cultures, different foods, it's wonderful. It's a really lovely experience. And, to be able to actually do business with people and build relationships up there, I think is really valuable as well.
Mm.
One lesson I learned early on, I was in Kuala Lumpur and I met the CEO of the Institute of Bankers up there, who was a senior guy, and I'd got a meeting with him with my colleague who was selling for us out of Singapore, and he listened to us, listened to the whole pitch, loved what we did, but then he said, "Now, Julian, I'm not going to do any business with you until you open an office in Malaysia and employ Malaysian people."
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, fair enough. Thanks for being upfront and
Yeah.
honest. But that's what was important to him.
Mm.
And, I just really appreciated that sort of candor
Yeah.
because then you go, okay, well, that's what's important here is actually about, how we're not just someone coming in to sell a product.
Yes.
We need to have tenure. We need to have
Mm.
trust. We need to work with locals. And so if you start to learn those things, it becomes,
Mm.
a lot easier. It's never
Yeah.
that easy.
No, so in your experience, if you give one piece of advice to a business leader trying to future-proof, their business or their workforce, what would it be?
Future proof up in Asia or more
Yeah,
generally?
in generally, yeah, could be
Yeah.
either, could be both.
Well, I think in Asia, it is an investment, right? So I think, recruit local, but also, have the funds there to bring people to Australia, connect people to head office. Um, there's nothing worse than people being isolated and going off on their own tangent. I think that's a two-way street. Um, as far as building up capability within your organization, it's not something a leader can do by themselves. You need to have a good team around you, and you need to listen to that team, and you need to have different skills in that team.
Mm.
And in our senior leadership team, it's of 7 of us, and we will debate things, and people do come at things from different points of view. And sometimes you've just got to say, well, that's actually a better idea than mine. Let's go with it. Um, and to know when to sort of pull back, I think is really important.
Mm.
Um, I do a lot of public speaking, so for me, it's easy to dominate a conversation,
Yeah.
and so sometimes you've got to pull back from that and say, no, sit back and listen.
Mm. No, I really like that advice because I think that as much as people can say, "Oh, I'm going to have my team involved," that really just means I'm going to tell them what I'm thinking.
Yep.
So, so that idea of actually, being quite intentional and saying, "Okay, no, we all need to have different opinions," and checking that we're not all just agreeing in every meeting. Because if everyone's agreeing in every meeting, then we've also probably got an issue here. So.
Mm.
Um, and just finally, if there was one thing that you wish you knew when you started your business about leading people that you didn't know or that surprised you, what would that be? If you could go back in time and give yourself some advice.
Yeah. I suppose the lessons I've learned are around that you can't be everything for everyone.
Mm.
Um, there are people who are going to come through your business and play a really valuable part in that business and be really fantastic, to work with. But there'll come a time where they're, particularly in small business, there just isn't that growth opportunity for them. And so it needs to be, you need to get to that before it becomes confrontational. My initial career was in hospitality, and they're very much pyramid structures. There's only so many management roles, and you might have a big organization, 150 people I had at one point, but there's only a certain amount of management roles. So when that person gets to that position where their next job is in management and we don't have one, you've got to say, well, how do we help you? What is it that you need to do? Rather than getting to a position of either poor performance, conflict, and all of those things that drain us as business managers. Because it takes an inordinate amount of time to manage that sort of side of people management rather than the positive side.
Yes.
I think sometimes it's like 50-60% of your time is spent on that one individual who's not happy, as opposed to how do we grow with the people who are really good for the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. So my LinkedIn profile is there, Julian Fenwick, and obviously through our website. And yeah, happy to talk to people. I'm often at conferences, so by all means, come up and say hello.
Excellent. And we'll put the links to those in our show notes as well. So thanks so much for joining me. It's been a really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it today. And hopefully everyone listening has got one thing that you can take out of today's episode as well. And if you've received value, I'd love it if you could leave a rating or a review over Apple Podcasts or Spotify so someone else can also find the episodes to help with their business. Any final thoughts from you, Julian?
No, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And I hope that people get some value out of it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Episodes are released on Mondays, so click the subscribe button and you'll be notified of when it's available. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, head on over to amplifyhr.com.au or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can start a conversation.